Joining us now by phone, Roger Stone, and by Skype, we've got our good friend, pollster John Zogby. John Zogby, first to you, and Hillary's win tonight, or this afternoon, since it's out west, in the Nevada caucus. I made mention of the fact that caucus meetings were very convenient for a lot of union workers, and perhaps that made the difference. Your take on it?
Well, it's not going to matter come November. I mean, Democrats do things one way and Republicans do things another way. What is going to matter is the fact that she's barely ahead in Nevada. Now, she won by a few coin tosses in Iowa. She got drubbed in New Hampshire. She squeaked out a victory in Nevada. But the enthusiasm is still on Bernie Sanders' side. And there's enough to propel him not only to South Carolina, but I think, if he continues this way, to go all the way to the convention. Again, he's probably not going to be the nominee. She may be the nominee, but there's going to be a lot of hurt feelings. I'm thinking Gene McCarthy in 1968, Ted Kennedy against Jimmy Carter in 1980, Gary Hart against Mondale in 1984. This is a damaged candidate, Hillary Clinton, and I think it's a wounded Democratic Party.
And we will continue to discuss the consequences of what transpired with the Democrats, but we would be remiss if we did not turn to the other side of the aisle and the Republican primary tonight in South Carolina. On the phone, it's Roger Stone, who has seen more than his share of Republican campaigns. Roger Stone, what are you expecting tonight in the Palmetto State?
Well, before I go there, let me take a quick shot at Hillary because I think it's important. As you know, going into the South Carolina primary, you have a disproportionate number of African-American voters. I really don't understand why Bernie Sanders hasn't raised the issue of Danny Williams, the abandoned son, the abandoned illegitimate son of Bill Clinton, who was discovered by Newsmax, by the way, broke this story, and secondarily, the fact that Bill Clinton's policies have incarcerated more black people than any president in American history. African Americans need to get over their sentimental attachment and look at what the Clintons have done personally and politically. Before we go, I do agree with John that I think Hillary will be the nominee because the fix is in with the party machinery. As far as South Carolina is concerned, I think South Carolina is a great state for Donald Trump's Andrew Jackson-style populism. I expect him to win. It was never realistic to think that he would win at the 40% level that he was polling a few months ago. The campaign has developed, but I think Trump comes in first at around 30%. The real news tonight, I think, is likely to be a second-place finish by Marco Rubio. That, of course, would be a very substantial blow to Ted Cruz, and I think begins to hasten the winnowing of this process. Now, it seems to me everybody points to the fact that if Jeb Bush and ultimately John Kasich were to get out of the race, that would inure to the benefit of Rubio. But they seem to lose sight of the fact that Cruz and Carson votes are more likely to go to Trump.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned this, Roger, and I want to get back to you in just a second. But when I hear you set up the scenario with a Marco Rubio second-place finish, Steve Malzberg, I've been hearing all this momentum for Rubio, yet nationally, you took a look at Matt Drudge's website today. You had the Immigration and Customs Enforcement talking about Rubio and the Gang of Eight. You had an ad from Ted Cruz that I thought was absolutely effective, matching up the rhetoric of Marco Rubio on amnesty with that of Barack Obama. Do you really think Rubio is going to rally? Yeah, he's got Nikki Haley and some of the South Carolina elected slate there. But is that enough to pull Rubio into a second-place finish?
I think it's now or never, to be honest with you. I think if with the support that you just alluded to, if he does not finish second or a very strong third, within a point of second place or 2 points of second place, then I think it's going to be tough for him the rest of the way. I really do. I think that story about ICE, I think Rubio fired back quite effectively at that accusation. And look, I'm no fan of his on immigration, but there's no doubt if you saw him at one of the town halls or even the debate in South Carolina a week ago, he really has given strong performances up there on the stage. stage, whether it be on college loans or whether it be on foreign relations and how to deal with ISIS and Russia, et cetera. So I think he's at a tipping point here. We talk about Bush, who really, if he finishes fourth, really should just give it up. But Rubio, if he could score a second-place finish here, I think it would really be an advantage for him going forward. But if he doesn't, if he finishes a disappointing third or maybe even near fourth, then I think he has to question his campaign.
As we await the results coming in from South Carolina, where the polls closed about 10 minutes ago, we should make note of the fact that last night in North Charleston, Donald Trump started talking about national security. It makes sense to do so in the Low Country, in and around Charleston. And to make the point about being tough on our enemies, he related an oft-told story about how General John Pershing executed 50 Muslim prisoners in the Philippines.
And he took the 50 terrorists, and he took 50 men, and he dipped 50 bullets in pig's blood. You heard that, right? He took 50 bullets, and he dipped them in pig's blood. And he had his men load his rifles, and he lined up the 50 people, and they shot 49 of those people. And the 50th person, he said, you go back to your people and you tell them what happened. And for 25 years, there wasn't a problem. Okay? 25 years, there wasn't a problem.
Roger Stone, you were advising Donald Trump earlier. You continue to have more than a casual interest in his campaign. I heard that story a lot on Capitol Hill during my days in Congress, and yet the Donald is getting criticism for using that story today.
Yeah, I can imagine that the politically correct police are going out of their mind. This is exactly what people like about Donald Trump. He is fearless. He tells the truth. By the way, JD didn't make up that story. That story is what is called history, factual history. He also, I think, was very effective today when he asked publicly whether Barack Obama would have attended Justice Scalia's funeral if it had been at a mosque. Trump's on fire rhetorically, and I think it's going to show. I should also mention my inference that I believe Rubio will end up second in South Carolina is based on two different private surveys I've seen, not just my instinct. I don't know whether this is a manifestation of the endorsement by Governor Nikki Haley, but I do think that there is some momentum for Rubio. And Jebb's numbers are flat. He could actually finish behind John Kasich. I don't think it is likely, but it is certainly possible.
Very
So,
good. Now,
again,
Roger,
what
I'm
we're
sorry to
headed
cut
to-
you off, but I would be remiss because you made mention of the tweet that Donald Trump sent out. Let's show it to everybody. Here is what Trump had to say, John Zogby. I wonder if President Obama would have attended the funeral of Justice Scalia if it were held in a mosque. Very sad that he did not go. Now, John Zogby, Donald Trump says what a lot of people are thinking. Has he found a rhetorical sweet spot, maddening though it may be, with many of the elites in this country?
Well, meddling with some of the elites, count me among the elite. You know, I think Donald Trump is a disgusting piece of flotsam for even using that terminology or the Pershing story. Look, whoever is elected president of the United States has to be a diplomat of some sort. We may have enemies, but our enemies are not 1.3 billion Muslims. They are some Muslims. But I'm on here as a pollster.
Yeah, but John, he's not talking about 1.3 billion Muslims. He's talking about Muslims who would do us harm and we would have to either shoot or put to death or be in a firefight with. And what he's saying is if those terrorists know that we're going to use bullets dipped in pig's blood and they won't go to Allah and get their virgins, it will make a difference. He's not talking about the massive Muslim population. He's being very specific to people who we would need to use bullets on.
Let him get in for the final 20 seconds before we go to break. Go ahead, John. Last word here.
You and I are friends. Roger and I are friends. We strongly, strongly disagree on this. He did not qualify which Muslims. He said Muslims, and for that, all right, it may work for him, and if it does, God bless him. But quite frankly, it was over the top. Now, back to Barack Obama attending the funeral.
and-
Look, sometimes presidents go and sometimes they don't.
And we're going to have to go right now, but we will be back with more in the interim. Our thanks to Steve and to Roger and to John, and our coverage continues right after this.